Item 7.1, the delegated authority to make a submission to the Emergency Management Bill number 2. I'll ask Councillor Filipina, the chairman of that, the appropriate committee, Civil Defence Committee, to move and introduce this before Sarah and Parul join us. Councillor Filipina, please.
Tēnā koe e te he mana, tēnā koe e te rangatira, ngā mihi o te tauhau, ki a koe e te kaikauni hira, and also to everybody else. Just wanted to wish everybody a happy new year, and I hope you've all rested over the holiday period. In regards to this particular issue, firstly, I just wanted to acknowledge our kaimahi, Wayne Brown, and for his work. I know he spent several days and also over the weekend doing this submission. Want to acknowledge him, want to acknowledge Sarah and the team as well in regards to this particular item. Chair, as you know, we were put in a position where we had to do a submission, and it was going to be by the midnight the 3rd. That is still the case with our submission as Auckland Council, even though there's been 15 days given an extension to it. That applies to those areas across Aotearoa that have suffered from the recent floods. So that doesn't apply to us. Our recommendation, and for this is a procedural recommendation, is for myself, the Deputy Chair, Councillor Ken Turner, and our Haukura member, Fire Michelle Wilson, to sign off on just editorial things. It's not going to have a bearing. My last comment for this particular item is that as a result of having to put a submission in by today, I asked our staff to organise a meeting of the committee to have a talk and to have our input. So to those and the whole committee turned up, just want to acknowledge you, ngā mihi kia koutou katoa. So to you, Chair, to you, Mr Mayor, I then would just hand it over to the staff. Ngā mihi kia koutou katoa. Kia ora.
Thank you, Councillor, for that. Staff, come forward, please. And thank you, Adam, for all those dozens of emails and texts telling me about the weather. I was out on the boat, and it was handy, and I didn't actually need to be told it was blowing 40 knots, but it was nice to know that you thought there was 40 knots as well.
Tēnā koutou katoa, Mayor, Deputy Mayor and members. So as Councillor Filipina explained, this paper is before governing body today for a procedural reason. Normally the Auckland Council's submission on the Emergency Management Bill would be approved by the Civil Defence and Emergency Management Committee. However, the committee's first meeting is not until the 5th of March, and the deadline is today. We're therefore seeking delegation for the Chair, Deputy Chair and Hukura Member Representative Michelle Wilson to approve this final submission. Just a couple of words. I'm putting together the draft submission. We've worked closely with the CDM Committee, including Hukura, sought input from local boards, relevant council departments, Watercare, Auckland Transport, Auckland Council Controllers and Recovery Managers, and through Ngā Matarai, we've prompted awareness with iwi to make their own submissions due to time constraints. So our final draft was circulated to all members yesterday, and the bill itself, it's an overdue update to legislation that dates back to 2002. The bill seeks to modernise the emergency management system. It also reflects lessons from the North Island severe weather events in 2023. The bill also reflects Auckland's own improvement pathway since that time, which is captured in our group plan, with tangible progress in building our capability, our capacity, and also our community connection over these last 3 years. The draft submission, it states that Auckland Council broadly supports the bill and the need for a fully funded national improvement programme. Our draft submission does, however, recommend several key refinements, and those in headline are clearer recognition of the crucial role of individuals, whānau, iwi and the communities play, so that whole of society approach, stronger positioning of iwi Māori as enduring partners in the system, enabling recovery to grow at that same level of maturity as response, and addressing compliance costs and the risk of cost shifting to local government. So we've addressed those concerns within our draft submission. So the draft submission also recommends some technical amendments in support of our key submission points, and those are included, as you'll have seen, in the Appendix 1. So we're happy to take any questions on the report.
Councillor Filipani.
Oh, sorry, Koro Matua, just saying if I could move, and Councillor Turner second the
I think that's
recommendation.
appropriate.
Kia ora.
Moved Filipino, seconded Turner. Questions, please. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, and thank you for the work that you do. It's vitally important to our city and communities. Look, I've just got a question around calling a state of emergency, because I've obviously done that on behalf of the Mayor when he was overseas. But can you explain the process that we currently have and what changes you're looking at as part of the submission process around who is responsible for calling that state of emergency?
There is a process of consideration that we go through to call a state of emergency based on a number of factors that are set out within both legislation and a procedure. The way in which it works, when we are aware that a situation is elevating, we go through that the same checklist each time, and we then call a meeting of the duty controller, the duty team, the general manager, a response manager, and the public information management function manager, and come together, go through that checklist, and consider whether a state of emergency would be required in order to coordinate the response. The state of emergency in the new bill is changed slightly, the definition of emergency, so that the inability of the response agencies to deal with the emergency is now a factor, not the main or only factor that is now considered. It's more around whether or not it would enable a better coordinated response. So once that consideration has been put together, a report's put together, and then a recommendation is put for the mayor as a delegated person to sign off that state of emergency. So that advice is taken to the mayor for consideration, or his delegate, and then at that point, then a decision around the state of emergency is made.
Great, thanks. I was just trying to see the difference between what we currently had and what the submission
Yeah,
was.
it is that slight nuance of difference in the definition of a state of emergency. It seems minor, but it does enable consideration of a state of emergency before the emergency services are unable to respond.
Thank you.
Councillor Bartley.
Oh, thank you for this. Thank you, Councillor Alf and Councillor Kent, for your leadership in this committee, and thank you to the officers. I read your response, Adam, on the discussion paper, so I really appreciated you putting through the views of our community in regards to once an emergency happens and how communities felt sort of disengaged from that process. So it's good to see that this has been highlighted in the bill and in our submission. My question is around the whole of society approach in our submission. I'm worried that will end up kind of devoiding responsibility of agencies. Seems like we've gone from an extreme of very bureaucratic process to now, it's up to individuals, communities to look after themselves. So I want some reassurance that isn't going to be a consequence of the whole of society approach that we're supporting in our submission.
Through the chair, it is a very valid point that you make. The intent is not to ask for get rid of our own responsibilities, but the intent is to make sure that every member of the society is aware that they have personal responsibility to be ready for what might happen. So I think it is saying that not only waiting for agencies to come in to help, but what can you do as an individual and at household level to be ready when a weather event happens. So it is a collective way of thinking about how do we do this together. when things go wrong, what can you do now to be better prepared as well? So I think it's just making sure people are aware things will happen. There will be more bad weather that comes, but what is it that you can do at an individual level? And in terms of implementation, the team is very aware that we need to work with our communities to get them ready and to make sure that they are aware of the hazards that sit within the region and what is it that they can do and what is it that we can do and what is it that the government can do. So it's just making everybody aware and conscious of what is happening around us.
Thank you.
Councillor Patterson-Hammond.
Thank you, and Happy New Year. This is referencing the email I sent yesterday, but we heard from the Disability Rights Commissioner on this issue, and I was very encouraged to see in the draft that there was reference to recommendations to mandate consultation with disabilities communities, but I was wondering if you could go into a little more detail and explain our submissions recommendations on that aspect of emergency management. I know there's been a lot of work done with these consultations from AEM in the past 3 years, which is great, but yeah, I wondered if you could go into that in a bit more detail, please.
Yeah, through the chair. Yes, and thank you for your response in support of the submission. In terms of there is an implicit requirement within the bill to look after the needs of disabled persons through the bill and for disproportionately affected persons, and disabled people are included within that definition. The Auckland Council has been doing a significant amount of work through AEM with our disability partners and developing a framework to work with a minimum of 20 partners this year to create proper framework for helping disabled communities prepare for and be prepared for what they can do to prepare themselves for emergencies and making sure that they are appropriately supported in that way. We're bringing a report to our coordinating executive group and also to committee within the next 6 weeks that will update on that programme. So, and we've prepared an email back to the Disability Rights Commissioner explaining what that programme is and inviting them to work with us and making sure that we are working with them and working with all of the people, because some of these organisations, partner organisations we work with are national level and some are regional level, Auckland level.
I've got no other questions, but I've got one myself a little bit following on from the Deputy Mayor. After the tragic floods we had here 3 years ago, there was, I was heavily criticised for not declaring the emergency quick enough, and because I waited until I was asked to by the by the appropriate authorities, which I don't think that's changed, is it? Although mayors seem to be much quicker off the block these days. Is that the case? And secondly, how are we making a clear explanation to the media about that particular process? Because of having been criticised and being late with it, we never actually used the powers that came in with that declaration. And so are we putting something in our submission that kind of clarifies? Because the declaration seems to have risen to much bigger thing in the public and the press's eyes than what it really was. So we never actually used the powers that I was criticised for not invoking.
Thank you for raising that, Mayor. Certainly since 2023, part of what we've really tried to strengthen is that connection with our agency partners, Fire and Emergency New Zealand Police, and we now actively engage with them with any event. So just this recent Upper North Island severe weather event, we had an overnight presence, we had police liaison, fire and emergency liaison, and we were able to work with them directly around the tragic situation that happened up in Warkworth. Equally, we would, if things were escalating to a point where we felt that there was a need, we would be talking to them to inform the information that we then brief the Mayor on the need for us to activate so that we can access the powers that are available. For us in Auckland, I mean, we've seen Northland, Bay of Plenty, Coromandel, Tairāwhiti very much impacted by this severe weather event. in Auckland, we were relatively lucky, and we didn't see the sort of impacts that the rest of the country has seen. We've definitely got some isolated cases of impacts with Maharangi West and with Aotea Great Barrier Island. We're working actively now with central government and MSD about what we can do with Aotea Great Barrier Island in terms of support for that community. And for us, that was probably the biggest impact. What it highlighted, I think, for us was that going forward, they are a unique location that probably need to be worked with as we would with Coromandel and how we deal with that. But in terms of that declaration process and the process that we use, we're certainly more engaged with our agency partners and would keep the Mayor or the Deputy Delegate well informed with why we needed to declare and the powers that were needed. And I might just ask Sarah to just comment on the actual submission with regards to that and whether there was anything significant to change.
Yeah, in terms of the submission, there's a technical detail that we're wanting to iron out in the bill that sits around the definition of the authority, unitary authority and territorial authority, wards and districts. So it's quite probably quite technical to explain, slightly tedious, but we're seeking a clarification of that within the bill. But it will enable the Mayor to access those powers that they have done before, and should be clarity in making sure that that's speedy and it's clear what it is. In terms of that sort of what powers are required, those are very similar to the powers that were there previously, and they all relate around those powers for councils in particular, around access to properties, access to asking people to evacuate, and those types of things. So around compliance with those.
I might just comment more generally, if I can. Adam will, and the team will correct me. There is no doubt that mayors, councillors are moving more quickly to declare emergencies. And not to be critical of the past, but it was seen as quite a technical decision based on what powers might be needed to be exercised. There are other considerations here, and this is where the shift has been really. That, you know, there's a symbolic and leadership value in declaring an emergency, even on a slightly preparatory basis. So the ground has shifted here, and you will see different decisions made probably a little bit sooner than what might have been in the past if it was looked at purely through a technical lens. Okay, so and I think NEMA is well aware of this, and their earlier guidance, at the risk of criticising, their earlier guidance wasn't particularly helpful in terms of recognising that reason why you might want to declare an emergency pretty promptly or even proactively.
Just in addition to what Phil said, the change in the Act also refers to the definition of an emergency, which kind of leads to that to say, if you're anticipating it to go up, it doesn't have to be there yet. So it is giving it that flavor in terms of go early in terms of declaring and be ready for what might be coming.
And just through the chair, one other comment is that the minister, through Minister Mark Mitchell, he's also supportive of that precautionary or preparatory state of emergency. So very much trying to promote getting ahead of the ball so that, you know, we're better prepared. And it does also have that added value of encouraging our public to be prepared or to take preparations. So yeah, there is, as Phil said, definitely a shift in how we view emergencies and how quickly we stand up to take action. So. Thank you.
Councillor Turner.
Thank you very much. I do worry, though, on the back of those comments and those questions and statements by the Chief Executive, and I mentioned this through the process, of us losing sight of what our emergency management program is for. The question of when and how and the wording of an emergency being implemented has basically been the main discussion through this whole process from start to finish. And we also had, you know, Whangarei bringing in a precautionary emergency, which there's no such thing. So can we be sure that this clarification is helping to make sure that we keep it clarified, that this is not about finance, this is about an emergency, it's about people, it's about health and safety.
Through the chair, absolutely. It really also helps with that clarity on that state of emergency situation also helps with our public messaging, which also helps communities then know exactly what to do.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Simpson, please.
Yeah, sort of, I think the Chief Executive has almost gone there. My question was going to be, what is the difference between a precautionary state of emergency and a state of emergency?
The Act doesn't define the two. There is no precautionary state of emergency. It's just the wording that some choose to use when they have declared. So if you look at the paperwork and the process behind it, it'll just be a state of emergency.
Isn't a step process to go from a precautionary to full on or precautionary, no, it's no longer needed. It is just, right.
Yeah, through the chair, we would use the same process, that checklist, and then we'd make that decision to declare. The use of the word precautionary, I think, gives emphasis to that particular group who are declaring, but for us, a declaration is a declaration.
Okay, I think no further questions. I'll put the motion. Hang on. Councillor Filipainen, do you want to sum up in any way? Quite happy with that? Thank you.
Your Worship, it's Christine Fletcher here, and my camera is not working on Windows for some reason. May I ask a question, please?
Of course you can. I didn't realise you're...
No, I'm trying to use two devices because Windows 11 has not transferred the camera apparently with the Teams, but that's a technology issue which I'm trying to resolve. Thank everybody for the work that they've done on this, and I'm really mindful of it because I was in the Coromandel when the precautionary state of emergency was called. In fact, I have a broken ankle today because I was helping others through the emergency. What I'm interested to know is, did the TCDC call a precautionary in part because this storm that was probably more devastating than Gabrielle for the Coromandel area didn't have a name, so people weren't taking it seriously? Is there an issue around just trying to create awareness if you don't have something dedicated like a cyclone or, given a name and a sense of alarm when it's just constant, continuous rain? Can the officers explain why, even though technically there is no such thing as a precautionary state of emergency, they might have used it in that way?
Thank you, Councillor, and through the chair. I think in the case of those areas that declared, including the Coromandel and Thames, it was really about the predicted impacts that they were getting prepared to receive, as opposed to the cyclone not being named. It was very clear right through that the impacts of that weather system were going to be significant, and that even though it was an unnamed low, it was going to combine with the other low that had just passed through over the weekend previous, and it was more the impacts that were anticipated that they were going to receive that had them taking that precautionary action. And they did, as you know, receive significant 500 millimetres plus, so huge impacts, and that did give them the ability to sort of be ahead of the ball a bit, and that was the driver, as I understand it, Councillor.
And that is something that Auckland could also deploy should it be required going into the future?
Correct.
Thank you.
Councillor Foley. Oh, any more questions? I think we're now into discussions now, but no, I think so. We'll go to discussion. Councillor Foley, please.
Kia ora, thank you, Your Worship, for the opportunity to comment. I'm just going to make a brief comment. Firstly, just to thank Councillor Filipainen for his leadership in this space for many, many decades. as well as your leadership as the chair of this committee, alongside your deputy, Councillor Turner, and of course our wonderful staff for putting in the hard work to put our submission together. I strongly support our submission and our recommendation to strengthen the bill to fully embed a whole of society approach in emergency management, and I really like how that's worded in our submission. Everyone around this table will know what we experienced during the Auckland floods and the key role that our communities played, iwi, marae, community groups, sports clubs, surf clubs. We saw during that emergency just how important it was to know your neighbours. And although many neighbours came to each other's aid being strangers, what we learned from that is that we do need to build more resilience in our communities. I am mindful too, though, of the concerns raised by Councillor Bartley, and accept that, and really thankful that our staff have made it clear that by saying a whole of society approach, we also mean us as council, we also mean fire and emergency and our defence forces as well. So I'm really keen for our submission to go forward with that strong support from all of us here. We've seen it recently as well in the recent weather events, how iwi and marae stepped up and opened their facilities up to provide shelter for devastated people, many of whom were visitors to our country as well. So I think it's a really, really good point that we make in our submission. I hope it's taken on board, and I hope that that's supported by Parliament as well. Kia ora. Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Philippine, we're going to sum up here.
Yeah, kia ora he mana. Look, Chair, I wanted to acknowledge your office in regards to replying back to an email around the disability and our whaikaha. So I just want to acknowledge the reply to the Commissioner, the Disability Commissioner, and also to Councillor Patterson-Hamlin, who replied. Rest assured, there is one of our staff, Greg Morgan, who is liaising with our disability sector in regards to everything emergency and civil defence. So that's all I really wanted to do, was obviously reiterate what others have said around this table to our staff. Thank you so much, and in particular Wayne Brown for his work that he did over the weekend and during other days in the evening. So just wanted to acknowledge everybody. Kia ora.
Oh, I'll put the motion now. All those in favour, please say aye. To the contrary, none, carried unanimously. Thank you for that. We'll now move to item 7.